disagree with this statement.
The revolution will not be televised.
The revolution will not be televised. A spoken word song recorded by Gil-Scott Heron back in 1970, which introduced into popular culture a phrase which has since been repeated.
The revolution will not be televised.
Revolution will not be televised.
It will not be televised.
Reworded.
The revolution will be televised.
This revolution ain't televised. We're prayer.
Repurposed.
The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is about basketball.
And in some cases directly refuted in later references.
With a couple 4-5s and the revolution will be televised.
And whether you agree or not, I think it's time for us to reconsider what it really means.
Hold it now.
Well, you know, the catchphrase, what that was all about, the revolution will not be televised, that was about the fact that the first change that takes place is in your mind. The thing that's going to change people is something that no one will ever be able to capture on film. It'll just be something that you see and all of a sudden you realize, I'm on the wrong page.
So a real meaningful change in society being something that's internal as opposed to external. That change happens deep within people rather than superficially.
Will not be televised. Will not be televised. Will not be televised. Will not be televised.
Make sense? But that's not the only thing that it's saying. As much as it's about where this change would happen, it's expressing where this change would not be seen. And the CUREiculum proposes that hidden in plain sight is the reason why the revolution will not be televised. And it does have to do with you being positive, negative, or neutral. But that's only the beginning. There's something a bit more manipulative at play. And it has to do with how someone views the world. I'm gonna try and bring some concepts that go over our heads back down to earth. To do this, there's some M words I want to use. First, media. Now, media is plural for the word medium, not as in small, medium, large, but medium as in something used to communicate, a way that a message gets to us. Media has a long history, and it's changed through different civilizations in different ways. Different forms of media include books, films, songs, TV shows, pamphlets, billboards, memes, video games, construction signs, clothes with messages. If it's communicating a message, then technically it's media. You're engaging with media right now. So let's say we take this M and throw this word in front of it, the media. In our culture, we use the media to describe popular vehicles for information and entertainment, or what we call mass media through mass communication. So if media could mean standing on the box in your city with a bullhorn, mass media is the bullhorn that's heard around the world. And for the most part, they hold some level of brand recognition in the culture. You know them, right? Most of what is considered the media is relatively new. In fact, with the exception of print media, most of them and their respective industries were established in the last century. This means you could or may already have met someone who remembers life before a major form of everyday media even existed. And yes, life did exist before the media. Now today, the media is these industries. While we have a seamlessly endless list of brands and platforms in which we receive messages, 90% of the content and distribution in the media industries is controlled by very few, very big companies. At the time of this class's creation, there were only 6. Now over time, this list gets remixed. Companies merge, names change, companies acquire other companies. So this really isn't about who the companies are, or that now, technically, other types of companies are also creating media content. What it is about is that there's just over a handful of them. Now, just 6 companies is a pretty significant difference between, say, 1983 when there were 50 different companies. And it occurs through something called media consolidation, a process by which companies maintain corporate power and position by merging into big conglomerates, consolidating into fewer and fewer hands the decision on where the buck stops, about what information we get. And it is about where the buck stops. Radio, TV, film industries are businesses, and the intention is to make a profit. And there's several ways that the media industries do this, but it ultimately does ride on us, the audience. Popularity, when it comes to mass communication, is the goal. How many ears, eyes, and minds you can get. So you may think something as attention-grabbing as a revolution would be incredible content for any media outlet. Who wouldn't want to broadcast that, right? I mean, if a big corporation could profit from a revolution, why not televise it? Well, hang on. There are a few other factors that influence what ultimately gets to our eyes and ears, things that the media has to consider, something that Noam Chomsky calls filters, and he proposes that there are 5 of them. In his book, Manufacturing Consent, he discusses how the media has certain ulterior motives, things that they have to consider first and foremost. And this is what gives us that manipulation we associate with the media. One of them we just talked about, media ownership. Corporations and corporate conglomerates that control the media have to make a profit to maintain their respective positions of power. So the messages that they put out wouldn't want to bite the hand that feeds them. So they could certainly televise a uprising, riot, or just a political protest if it's not depicted in a way that threatens their own profit. Got me? In other words, not something that's directly against them or their corporate affiliates. A revolution can be televised if it doesn't affect their coin. That's how media ownership affects what we see. And if it passes through that filter, cool. But if a revolution is to be televised, it needs something else. That's the next filter. The media industry doesn't just sell us entertainment or news. They sell us. Our eyes and ears are sold to advertisers in order to promote a product or a message. In fact, whenever we're dealing with media coming to us for free, it's because you're the product. And that commercial that you just watched, or the product placement, or the brand that randomly starts to get mentioned a whole lot, that's what's paying for you, the consumer. So the decisions made by those companies that pay the media to advertise have a major say in what we ultimately see. And if the revolution were to be televised, it would still have to find its way to motivate people to consume. And this is very important and subtle to recognize about our culture. Whenever you have images that are promoting status, wealth, or a lifestyle of luxury, attached to something that's also promoting anything socially conscious, you're observing the agenda and the core values of our consumer culture, a culture that contradicts social consciousness, and where commercials never take breaks, because commercials tell us what we're aspiring toward. And this is what Gil-Scott Heron in his song insists is absolutely never gonna happen.
The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nubs. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner, because the revolution will not be televised, brother.
A real revolution couldn't be televised because a real revolution isn't commercial. Now you may be thinking, well, we saw a lot of corporations that we consume that came out in support of recent issues against police brutality, going out of their way to support mobilized protesters in the street. That's got to count for something, right? Let's keep going. The third filter that determines what we see is the media's connection to the establishment. Wealth, power in our society is concentrated at the top. We learn to compete for higher positions and the privileges that come with it. And the media is no exception. Therefore, for media to operate, it has to understand how power works, the rules to the game of power, and what you say and what you don't say about those who have it. This filter Chomsky calls media elites. The filter makes complicity, that's if you want to keep your position or climb up the ladder. And this desire to be in the room with the powerful and the wealthy makes them have to make certain exchanges to understand how to play by their rules. So wealth and power supports media by giving them access, feeding them scoops, giving celebrity appearances, exclusives, official accounts on stories. And the media, they want this because their own connection to established power and wealth in our society gives them power and wealth.
So the stories that matter because they're stamped by the elite.
Now, if the media determines that it wants to broadcast a revolution that may essentially be bad for the establishment, they'll have to think twice, because what's bad for the establishment may also be bad for them.
There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run, or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised.
So pushing out there any narrative that challenges the goals of the powerful or wealthy, or their values and methods, it might eventually push them as a media source out of the room. And in this case, with these types of narratives, we find the fourth filter, which influences what media shows us: Flak. This is what is done to discredit or trash certain stories, to divert attention away from certain messages, to distract the audience from an issue, to move us along from something that they don't want us to focus on, and within the industry, to discourage certain perspectives. Under the filter of Flak, media sees how other media sources are dealt with when they deviate from accepted narratives. Flak from the establishment keeps them in line. Which leads us to Chomsky's fifth and final filter: a common enemy. In the interest of the establishment and the media maintaining their position of relevance, it has to decide on a boogeyman in society. And this thing can change over time. Something like terrorism, immigrants, criminals, communism, socialism, rap music, addicts, street gangs, diseases, killer insects, certain political party, a certain religion, a country, community, cops, aliens, anything that can corral public opinion. As long as we can fear it and be against it, it's the enemy. For now. Because what this does is it justifies their existence. It shows why they're useful at keeping us all safe from this boogeyman. And for our consent has to give the audience a reason to endorse this establishment. Because feeling this way, we will cling to the status quo. The 5 filters of media control. And this is the power that media holds to frame to us a narrative. As the creators of narratives, the mass media tells the people what story they are in. The conflicts, the settings, and the characters. That's to say, who's the antagonist and the protagonist. There's a reason that bad news sells. When our perspectives say that tragedy or gloom and doom is all that's out there for us, it either antagonizes us or neutralizes us, which means we're either going against something or we're doing nothing. This is not the mentality of a protagonist, someone who stands for something despite the odds. Establishments are established based on the belief that they are the protagonist, the heroes in their own story. More on this next week, but for now, just know that we're always hearing a story about ourselves, and it's influencing what we want or are looking forward to, and how we try to get it. So depending on the story we think we're in, we make decisions on what should happen next. So this is what the CUREiculum believes is happening. There's another hidden filter. The status quo is something that would have to naturally change. And the media knows this. And there's little question if this change would happen. But how and when? A few weeks ago, we discussed COINTELPRO and Judas and the Black Messiah. Well, our media has created a messianic filter. Messianic, from the root word Messiah, is something that describes a coming change. And now you're thinking I just went religious on you? Yes and no. I kind of did. But if you look, the motive is in both religion and science. With this filter, the media brandishes a tool or a power to make or unmake celebrities, leaders, idols, as a way to control the narrative around people and ideas. And this is in preparation and prevention for something that would threaten the current paradigm and status quo. The ultimate change. It doesn't really matter what you believe in religiously. It has to do with what the people in power, those within our current paradigm, believe in. What they believe is a potential rise of dissent, something or someone that could negate this status quo. And it would bring about a fundamental change in the values within a society. And as a result, the present day construct that we know of would become null and void. There are two ways this is viewed. One of them deals with a divine being, prophesies to bring about a change in the world. This view is found in many religions, some you may know of, others not so much. But also, quiet as it's kept, this is the root of why and how our culture celebrates fame and stardom. The other is very simply the belief that there will be a complete change in the social order in a country or in the world. And this could come as a result of someone that may produce an idea that could revolutionize the way people were viewing their lives, or people unifying around a collective vision. The conflict theory in sociology says this comes from different groups seeking resources or power. And this expectation is even stated in government documents. So this is the social science side of it all. Within every paradigm and social system in history, and particularly those where oppression was present, this concern about a leader or political figure or message that might be accepted by the people who are oppressed, any group holding power has always been on the lookout for that. After all, they're comfortable with the way things are. Those who are in the establishment that share in this belief, religiously or secularly, understand their current position of power is being of key importance. The position to say what messages reach the masses and which ones don't. So conscious people, those of us recognizing how things are interconnected in the world, work to give attention to bringing about the type of change that we want, which means
when we face any challenge, we won.
And the media's job, through those filters we mentioned, is to convince you of otherwise. When you're made to feel neutral or negative, they're doing what they're supposed to do. It's how the status quo is maintained on behalf of the establishment and those that hold power.
Before you even know it's there, things ain't looking so good like a broken mirror.
But as conscious people, whether you're religious or not, we have to understand the messianic concept
Feels over like a broken marriage.
is something dictating our social political reality.
About to throw your hands on me like up in the air, but make this food your
And
medicine.
at every level of our society. Now, throughout history, among people who are removed from power or subjects of oppression,
The idea of a messianic figure becomes something symbolic, like celebrity.
When we wake every morning, we want.
It's looked at with adoration and anticipation of a new day. But today's celebrity focuses on celebrating people or what they have, not a message or its value, and oftentimes vices as opposed to their virtues, the scandals associated with individuals. And even when highlighting relevant matters, it tends to find a way to make the point about an individual. Through this, the media is able to create pseudo-messianic characters and moments for the control and maintenance of the status quo. And whether it's reasoned from the standpoint of prophecy or just looking at history, this is known, it is a conspiracy, and it's not a theory. And in this same right, surveillance, censorship, algorithms, and technological advances that nobody, not you or your third cousin's mama, was asking for, these are existing because of this filter. It ain't about you, it's about change and power. A messianic figure could bring about a revolution, or their message could. So in the event that such a charismatic leader should arise, the people, in observing them through the media, are prone to have this message or these ideas filtered to diminish the potency or threat they would pose to the establishment, or used only to show us limits on what's realistic and what's too far. And as for this figure, as always seen in our celebrity culture, they would also have to support societal values of money, fame, compliance, which keeps the status quo intact, and as a result, isn't revolutionary. The revolution cannot be televised. And I hope by now you know we're not just talking about television. So what has all this been about? What are we watching happen in the world? And why am I rapping about it? I'm Uncle Baye, onward and upward.